All right, my friends, we have been working on the comprehension strategy of inferring, haven't we? And we've been working on inferring about how different characters are feeling throughout the story. So today we're going to continue to work on making inferences about how different characters in our story are feeling. And today specifically, I'm going to make an inference about how Sophie feels about BFG. Okay? So I'm going to model for you, and then you're also going to have an opportunity to do some inferring with your partner, and then also on your own. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. So, my friends, as we're listening today, we're going to be listening for 3 words that we might not know. Those words, you're going to repeat them after me, are astonishment,
astonishment,
suspicious,
suspicious,
preposterous.
preposterous.
That one's even hard for me to say. If you hear those words as we're reading, my clue is that your hands are going to go straight to your knees. So if I hear the word suspicious, my hands are going to my knees. All right, let's listen for astonishment, suspicious, and preposterous. Boys and girls, the first chapter today, is called The Marvelous Ears. Back in the cave, the big, friendly giant sat Sophie down once again on the enormous table. "It is quite snuggly there in your night tie?" he asked. "You isn't frigid cold?" "I'm fine," Sophie said. "I cannot help thinking," said BFG, "about your poor mother and father. By now they must be jipping and skumping all over the house shouting, 'Hello, hello, hello, where is Sophie gone?'" "I don't have a mother and father," Sophie said. "They both died when I was a baby." "Oh, you poor little scrumplet," cried the BFG. "Is you not missing them very badly?" "Not really," Sophie said, "because I never knew them." "You is making me sad," the BFG said, rubbing his eyes. "Don't be sad," Sophie says. "No one is going to be worrying too much about me. That place you took me from was the village orphanage. We are all orphans in there." "You is an orphan?" "Yes." "How many is there in there?" 10 of us, Sophie said, all little girls. "Was you happy there?" the BFG asked. "I hated it," Sophie said. "The woman who ran it called Mrs. Clonkers, and if she caught you breaking any of the rules, like getting out of bed at night or not folding up your clothes, you got punished." "How is you getting punished?" "She locked us in the dark cellar for a day and a night without anything to eat or drink." "That rotten old rot-rat, sir," cried the BFG. "It was horrid," said Sophie. "We used to dread it. There were rats down there. We could hear them creeping about." "That filthy old fizzwiggler," shouted the BFG. "That is the horridest thing I's hearing for years. You is making me sadder than ever." All at once, a huge tear that would have filled a bucket rolled down one of the BFG's cheeks and fell with a splash to the floor. It made quite a puddle. Sophie watched in astonishment. "What a strange and moody creature this is," she thought. "Oh my goodness, Peter, what word did you hear?" "Astonishment." Thanks for putting your hands on your knees and following directions. Boys and girls, astonishment means great surprise. It said Sophie watched with astonishment. She couldn't believe how big his teardrop was, and also that he was so upset. What's up, Brianna? Yep. "What a strange and moody creature this is," she thought. "One moment he is telling me my head is full of squash flies, and the next moment his heart is melting for me because Mrs. Clonkers locks us in the cellar. This thing that worries me," Sophie says, "is having to stay in this dreadful place for the rest of my life. The orphanage was pretty awful, but I wouldn't have been there forever, would I?" "All is my fault," the BFG said. "I is the one who kid-snatched you." Yet another enormous tear welled from his eye and splashed on the floor. "Now I come to think of it, I won't actually be here all that long," Sophie said. "I's afraid you will," the BFG said. "No, I won't. Sophie said. Those brutes out there are bound to catch me sooner or later and have me for tea. I is never letting that happen, the BFG said. For a few moments, the cave was silent. Then Sophie said, May I ask you a question? The BFG wiped the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand and gave Sophie a long, thoughtful stare. Shoot away, he said. Would you please tell me what you were doing in our village last night? Why were you poking that long trumpet thing into the Gucci children's bedroom and then blowing through it? Aha! Cried the BFG, sitting up suddenly in his chair. Now he is getting noisier than a Parker. And the suitcase you were carrying, Sophie said, what on earth was that all about? The BFG stared suspiciously at the small girl sitting cross-legged on the table. Reese, what word did you hear? Suspicious. I actually took the "ly" off of it because we're going to talk about the word suspicious. It said, the BFG stared suspiciously at the small girl sitting cross-legged on the table. I would like you to whisper to me, what do you think the word suspicious might mean? Whisper to me. Okay, clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. My friends, who thinks they can tell me what the word suspicious might mean? Heaven, what do you think? Weird? Curious looking?
How do you know that? Like they're asking, like, how do you know that?
Okay. What do you think, Michael? Curious? Suspicious means feeling unsure if somebody's telling the truth or kind of curious why they're wondering something. I know I was always suspicious when I watched like Scooby-Doo because something strange was going on, so I was suspicious of different characters. Okay, I was unsure if someone was being honest and telling the truth. Let's keep going. You is asking me to tell you whoopsie big secrets, he said. Secrets that nobody is ever hearing of before. I won't tell a soul, Sophie said. I swear it. How could I anyway? I'm stuck here for the rest of my life. You could be telling other giants. No, I couldn't, Sophie said. You told me they would eat me up the moment they saw me. And so they would, said the BFG. You is a human being, and human beings is like straw bunkles and cream to those giants. If they are going to eat me the moment they see me, then I wouldn't have time to tell them anything, would I? Sophie said. You wouldn't, said the BFG. Then why did you say I might? Because I is brimful of buzz boogers, said BFG. If you listen to everything I am saying, you will be getting an earache. Please tell me what you were doing in our village, Sophie said. I promise you can trust me. Would you teach me how to make an elephant? The BFG asked. What do you mean? Sophie said. I would dearly love to have an elephant to ride on, the BFG said dreamily. I would so much love to have a jumbly big elephant and go riding through green forests, picking peachy fruits off the trees all day long. This is a sizzling hot, muck-frumping country we live in. Nothing grows in it except snozzcumbers. I would love to go somewhere else and pick peachy fruits in the early morning from the back of an elephant. Sophie was quite moved by this curious statement. Perhaps one day we will get you an elephant, she said, and peachy fruits as well. Now, tell me what you were doing in our village. If you is really wanting to know what I am doing in your village, the BFG said, I is blowing a dream into the bedroom of those children. Blowing a dream? Sophie says. What do you mean? I is a dream-blowing giant, said the BFG. When all the other giants is galloping off every what way and which to swallow up human beings, I is scuttling away to other places to blow dreams into the bedrooms of sleeping children. Nice dreams, lovely golden dreams, dreams that is giving the dreamers a happy time. Now, hang on a minute, Sophie says. Where do you get those dreams? I collect them, the BFG said, waving an arm toward all the rows and rows of bottles on the shelves. I has billions of them. You can't collect a dream, Sophie said. A dream isn't something you can catch hold of. You is never going to understand about it, the BFG said. That is why I is not wishing to tell you. Oh, please tell me, Sophie said. I will understand. Go on. Tell me how you collect dreams. Tell me everything. The BFG settled himself comfortably in his chair and crossed his legs. Dreams, he said, is very mysterious things. They is floating around in the air like little wispy, misty bubbles, and all the time they is searching for sleeping people. Can you see that? Sophie asked. Never at first. Then how do you catch them if you can't see them? Sophie asked. Aha, said the BFG. Now he is getting on to the dark and dusky secrets. I won't tell a soul. I'm going to stop right there because I want to infer how Sophie's feeling right now. We're not done. I'm going to infer here that Sophie feels really honored. Okay? Honored means feels really good and special because, boys and girls, the BFG is entrusting her with some very deep of his most important secrets. Okay? And so he's going to tell her. He's kind of said, I'm going to tell you my biggest secrets. And so I know in my schema that when I was a little kid, this one time my mom sat me down and I had a rough day at school and she told me a story about something that had happened to her and she told me, she said, I've never told anyone this story ever before. And when she told me that, you guys, my heart felt so honored that my mom would trust me with that big secret that she hadn't told anyone ever before. So I infer that BFG is making Sophie feel honored with that secret. Okay? Did I, boys and girls, I'm going to have you use your thumbs up or your thumbs down, yes or no? Did I use evidence from the book when I inferred?
Yes.
I see lots of thumbs up. That's right, I did. Did I use schema? Did I use my own life experience to help me make that inference? Yeah, Peter, I sure did, didn't I? Good job. I'm going to continue reading, so keep listening. I is trusting you, the BFG said. He closed his eyes and sat quite still for a moment while Sophie waited. A dream, he said, as it goes whiffling through the night air, is making a tiny little buzzing humming noise. But this little buzzy hum is so silvery soft, it is impossible for a human being to be hearing it. You can hear it? Sophie asked. The BFG pointed up at his enormous truck wheel ears, which he now began to move in and out. He performed this exercise proudly with a little proud smile on his face. Is you seeing these? He asked. How could I miss them? Sophie said. They maybe is looking quite a bit preposterous to you, the BFG said, but you must believe me when I say they is very extra usual ears indeed. They is not to be coughed at. Leah, what word did you hear? Good job saying it correctly. The word is preposterous. Boys and girls, if he said this, tell me what you think it means. They maybe is looking a bit preposterous to you. What do you think preposterous might mean? Whisper to your neighbors about what preposterous might mean. Clap once if you can hear me. Thanks, Noah. 3, 2. Okay, who thinks they can tell me what the word preposterous might mean? Heaven, what do you think? Weird. Anything other than weird? Marilyn. Different. Silly. Boys and girls, they mean crazy, unbelievable, strange, weird. That's what it means. Preposterous. Let's keep going. I'm going to wait for all listening ears and bodies to show me they're ready. We're almost there. Thank you. I'm quite sure they're not, Sophie said. They is allowing me to hear absolutely every single twiddly little thing. You mean you can hear things I can't hear? Sophie said. You is deaf as a dumpling compared with me, cried the BFG. You is hearing only thumping loud noises with those little earwigs of yours, but I am hearing all the secret whisperings of the world. Such as what? Sophie asked. In your country, he said, I is hearing the footsteps of a ladybird as she goes walking across a leaf. Honestly? Sophie said, beginning to be impressed. What's more, I is hearing those footsteps very loud, the BFG said. When a ladybird is walking across a leaf, I is hearing her feet go clumpity, clumpity, clump like giant's footsteps. Good gracious me, Sophie said. What else can you hear? I is hearing the little ants chittering to each other as they scuttle around in the soil. You mean you can hear ants talking? Every single word, the BFG said, although I is not exactly understanding their language. Go on, Sophie said. Sometimes on a very clear night, the BFG said, and if I is swiggling my ears in the right direction, and here he swiveled his great ears upward so they were facing the ceiling, if I is swiggling them like this and the night is very clear, I is sometimes hearing faraway music coming from the stars in the sky. A strange little shiver passed through Sophie's body. She sat very quiet, waiting for more. My ears is what told me you was watching me out of your window last night, the BFG said. But I didn't make a sound, Sophie said. I was hearing your heart beating across the road, the BFG said, loud as a drum. Go on, Sophie said, please. I can hear plants and trees. Do they talk? Sophie asked. They is not exactly talking, the BFG said, but they is making noises. For example, if I come along and I is picking a lovely flower, if I is twisting the stem of the flower till it breaks, then the plant is screaming. I can hear it screaming and screaming very clear. You don't mean it, Sophie cried. How awful. It is screaming just like you would be screaming if someone was twisting your arm right off. Boys and girls, I'm going to stop for a minute. I would like you to whisper to your neighbor, would you like to have the ears the BFG has? Why or why not?
I don't have a neighbor.
Hold on a second. But before we start having these... Hands on your head if you can hear me. Hands in your lap if you can hear me. We're not ready for conversation. I need my friends to sit up. All right, now we can start chatting. Go ahead and tell your friends.
I don't got a partner. I don't got a I don't got a partner.
Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Voices off and ready. Thank you. Eyes on me. Give me a thumbs up if you want ears like BFG. Give me a thumbs down if you don't.
What?
Okay, some of you said yes and some of you said no. We're going to keep going or we're not going to get through it. Is that really true? Sophie asked. You think I is fizz-wiggling you? It is rather hard to believe. Then I is stopped right here, said the BFG sharply. I is not wishing to be called a fibster. Sit up, my friends. Thanks. Oh, no, I am not calling you anything, Sophie cried. I believe you. I really do. Please go on. The BFG gave her a long, hard stare. Sophie looked right back at him, her face open to his. I believe you, she said softly. She had offended him, and she could see that. I won't ever be fibbling to you, he said. I know you wouldn't, Sophie said, but you must understand that it isn't easy to believe such amazing things straight away. I understand that, the BFG said, so do please forgive me and go on, she said. He waited a while longer, and then he said, it is the same with trees as it is with flowers. If I is chopping an axe into a tree, I is hearing a terrible sound coming from inside the heart of the tree. What sort of sound, Sophie asked. A soft moaning sound, the BFG said. It is like the sound of an old man is making when he is dying slowly. He paused. The cave was very silent. Trees is living and growing just like you and me, he said. They is alive, so is plants. He was sitting very straight in his chair now, his hands clasped tightly together in front of him. His face was bright, his eyes round and bright as 2 stars. Such wonderful and terrible sounds I is hearing, he said. Some of them you would never wish to be hearing yourself, but some is like glorious music. He seemed almost to be transfigured by the excitement of his thoughts. His face was beautiful in its blaze of emotions. Tell me some more about them, Sophie said quietly. You just ought to be hearing the little mices talking, he said. Little mices is always talking to each other, and I is hearing them as loud as my own voice. What do they say? Sophie asked. Only the mices know that, he said. Spiders is also talking a great deal. You might not be thinking it, but spiders is the most tremendous natterboxes. And when they is spinning their webs, they is singing all the time. They is singing sweeter than a nightingale. What else do you hear? One of the biggest chat bugs is the caterpillars, the BFG said. What do they say? They is arguing all the time about who's going to be the prettiest butterfly. That is all they is ever talking about. Is there a dream floating around in here now? Sophie asked. The BFG moved his great ears this way and that, listening intently. He shook his head. There is no dream in here, he said, except for the bottles. I has a special place to go for catching dreams. They is not often coming to Giant Country. How do you catch them? The same way you is catching butterflies, the BFG said, with a net. He stood up and crossed over to the corner of the cave, where a pole was leaning against the wall. The pole was about 30 feet long, and there was a net on the end of it. Here is the dream catcher, he said, grasping the pole in one hand. Every morning I is going out and snitching new dreams to put in my bottles. Suddenly, he seemed to lose interest in the conversation. I is getting hungry, he said. It is time for eats. My friends, I know that was a long time to sit. You did a nice job. We are going to now have a job for you. Your job is going to be to infer. We talked about if you would like to have the ears of the BFG, but I want you to infer if you think BFG likes having his ears or not. If he likes having those ears that can hear everything. So you're going to use evidence from the book. So hopefully you were doing a good job of actively listening. And then you're going to have to use evidence from the book and what you think from your schema if you would like to hear every little thing that's going on. So in just a minute, I'm going to hand out your papers, and you're going to start doing that. Are there questions about what we're doing? You may quietly go back to your seats.
Oh, what about the video?
Hey,
22 minutes in.
right here.
Bye.